I stand at the altar of St. Mary's Cathedral, my hands clasped behind my back, trying to ignore the sweat that's beginning to form on my palms despite the air conditioning that's working overtime in this June heat. And I can feel the eyes of 200 guests boring into my back as I wait for Elena Martinez, the woman I've loved for 3 years, the woman who's supposed to become Mrs. James Chen in exactly 23 minutes according to the schedule we've planned down to the minute. My grandmother sits in the front row, her small frame draped in the silk cheongsam she wore to my parents' wedding 35 years ago, having flown all the way from Hong Kong specifically for this day, and I can see the way she keeps glancing at her watch with that subtle concern that only comes from decades of experience with disappointment. The church is decorated exactly as Elena wanted, white roses and baby's breath everywhere, with those expensive ribbon details that cost more than most people's monthly rent. And I remember how she insisted on having the ceremony here because it's where my parents got married, James, and it would mean everything to me, even though my family would have preferred the Buddhist temple where 3 generations of Chen men have been married. But I agreed. Of course I agreed. Because that's what I do when it comes to Ellen. I accommodate. I compromise. I make sure she's happy, even when it means my own preferences get pushed aside. My best man, David, leans over and whispers in my ear with the kind of urgency that makes my stomach drop. James, she's not answering her phone, and neither is her maid of honor. And I feel this cold sensation spreading through my chest like ice water being poured directly into my bloodstream. I told myself this morning that Elena's nervousness last night was normal, that her distracted behavior during the rehearsal dinner was just pre-wedding jitters, but now I'm remembering the way she kept checking her phone during dinner, the way she seemed to be somewhere else entirely when my father was giving his speech about welcoming her into the family. The murmur from the congregation is getting louder now, and I can hear Mrs. Promasius Patterson from Elena's work whispering to her husband about how unusual it is for a bride to be this late, and I want to turn around and tell everyone that Elena is never late, that she's the most punctual person I know, that something must be wrong. But then my phone buzzes against my chest, and I see Elena's name on the screen, and for a moment I feel relief flooding through me because she's calling to explain, to apologize, to tell me she's stuck in traffic or her dress needs a last-minute adjustment. James, her voice comes through the phone, and she's crying. I can hear it in the way her words are all breathy and unstable. I'm so sorry. I can't do this today. I just can't. And the world seems to tilt sideways as I process what she's saying, as I try to understand how the woman who spent the last 6 months obsessing over every detail of this wedding is now telling me she can't go through with it. Elena, what do you mean you can't do this? There are 200 people here. My grandmother flew in from Hong Kong. We have the reception booked. The photographer is here. What do you mean you can't? I'm trying to keep my voice low, trying not to let the panic I'm feeling seep into my words. But I can feel the best man and the priest both staring at me with growing concern. I'm at the hospital with Adrian, she says. And the way she says his name, Adrian Blake, her so-called childhood friend who's been increasingly present in our lives over the past few months, makes something cold and sharp twist in my stomach. His mother is having emergency surgery, and James, she has no one else. His father abandoned them when Adrian was 12, and I'm the only family she has left. She's been like a mother to me since I was 16, and I can't abandon her now. I'm standing here in my custom-tailored tuxedo, the one Elena helped me pick out because she said the charcoal gray would photograph beautifully against her white dress, and I'm trying to understand how Adrian Blake's mother having surgery trumps our wedding, how Elena can justify abandoning 200 guests and 3 years of planning for a woman who, while lovely, is not actually dying from what I understand. Elena, I'm sorry about Mrs. Blake, but we've planned this for 2 years. People have flown in from across the country, my business partners are here, this is our wedding day. I know you'll understand, James, you're so good, so stable, so emotionally mature, and that's why I love you, but Adrian needs me right now. And his mother specifically asked for me, and I can't let them down, she says, and I can hear Adrian's voice in the background, though I can't make out the words. And I realize that she's not calling from the hospital waiting room, she's calling from somewhere private, somewhere she and Adrian can have this conversation without interruption. Elena, please just come to the church, we can visit the hospital after the ceremony, I'm sure Mrs. Blake would understand. I say, but even as I'm saying it, I can hear how desperate I sound, how pathetic, and I hate myself for begging her to show up to our own wedding. I can't, James, I'm sorry, I'll make this up to you, I promise, but I have to be here, she says, and then the line goes dead. And I'm standing at the altar holding my phone, staring at the screen that shows the call has ended, and I realize that Elena Martinez, the woman I was supposed to marry in 18 minutes, has just chosen Adrian Blake and his mother over me, over us, over everything we've built together. The silence in the church is deafening now, and I can feel everyone waiting for me to do something, to say something, to explain why the bride isn't here, and I turn around to face the congregation, to face my grandmother's disappointed expression, to face my parents' barely contained anger, to face the photographer who's still taking pictures as if this is all part of the plan. I'm sorry, everyone. I say, and my voice sounds strange and distant even to my own ears. The wedding has been postponed due to a family emergency. Thank you all for being here today. The murmur that erupts from the congregation is immediate and overwhelming, and I can hear fragments of conversation, people asking what happened, people expressing sympathy, people already starting to gossip about what kind of emergency would cause a bride to miss her own wedding. Mrs. Chen, my mother, approaches me with tears in her eyes, and she takes my hands in hers, and she doesn't say anything, just squeezes my fingers, and I realize that she understands, that she's known this was coming even when I didn't. Elena doesn't come home that night, or the next night, or the night after that, and when I call her, she answers with that same breathless, distracted voice, telling me that Mrs. Blake is still in critical condition, that Adrian is falling apart, that she needs to be there for them because they have no one else. I spend those 3 days in our apartment, surrounded by wedding gifts that need to be returned, flowers that are already wilting, and the constant buzz of my phone as friends and family call to ask what happened, what they should do with the time they've taken off work, whether the wedding is rescheduled or canceled entirely. The apartment feels different without Elena's presence, and I find myself noticing things I've ignored for months, the way she always leaves her coffee cup on the counter instead of putting it in the dishwasher, the way she never quite closes the cap on her toothpaste, the way she's been gradually moving Adrian into our conversations, our plans, our life. I remember now how she started mentioning his name more frequently around Christmas, how she began visiting his mother more often, how she started taking phone calls from him that required her to step into the other room for privacy. When she finally comes home on Thursday, she looks exhausted and guilty, and she sits on the edge of our bed while I pack another bag for her because she's announced that she's going back to the hospital. James, I know you're angry, and I know this is hard, but Mrs. Blake is still touch and go, and Adrian is barely holding it together, and I can't abandon them now, she says, and I notice that she's not apologizing for missing our wedding, she's justifying it, explaining it as if it were the only reasonable choice she could have made. Elena, we had 200 people at that church. My grandmother flew in from Hong Kong. We lost the deposit on the reception venue, and the photographer is already posting about it on social media. I say, and I can hear how tired I sound, how defeated, because I've been having this conversation with her for 3 days now, and she keeps responding as if our wedding was just an inconvenience that got in the way of her real priorities. I know, and I'm sorry, but some things are more important than parties and photographs, she says, and the way she reduces our wedding to a party makes something angry and hurt twist in my chest, because this wasn't just a party, this was supposed to be the most important day of our lives, the day we promised to prioritize each other above everyone else, and she's already broken that promise before we even made it. I watch her pack her bag, and I notice that she's taking more clothes than she would need for a few days at the hospital, and when I ask her about it, she tells me that Adrian's apartment is closer to the hospital, that it makes more sense for her to stay there so she can be available if anything happens during the night. You understand, don't you, James? You're so rational, so logical, and I need you to understand that this is temporary, that once Mrs. Blake recovers, everything will go back to normal. But I'm beginning to understand that this isn't temporary, that Elena has made a choice, and that choice isn't me, isn't us, isn't the life we've been building together for 3 years. I'm beginning to see the pattern that's been developing for months, the way she always has an excuse when I want to spend time together, the way she's been gradually pulling away from my friends and family, the way she's been making me feel guilty for wanting her attention when Adrian needs her more. My business partner Marcus calls me that afternoon to tell me that 2 of our biggest clients have expressed concerns about my reliability, that having your bride leave you at the altar raises questions about your judgment, your stability, your ability to manage important commitments. James, I know this is personal, but it's affecting the business, and we need to address it, he says, and I realize that Elena's decision hasn't just destroyed our relationship, it's threatening everything I've worked for professionally. The local newspaper runs a small story about the wedding that never happened, calling it a society scandal, and speculating about the reasons behind the bride's absence. And I find myself becoming a subject of gossip, a cautionary tale, a man who couldn't even keep his own fiancée interested enough to show up to their wedding. My phone starts ringing with reporters wanting to know my side of the story, and I realize that Elena's choice has made me a public figure in the worst possible way. 2 months later, I discover through a Facebook post that Elena and Adrian are living together, and not in the temporary, caregiving way she's been describing to me when she calls to check in, but in the permanent, romantic way that means she's been lying to me for months. The post is from Adrian's cousin, congratulating them on their new apartment, and there's a photo of them standing in front of a building I don't recognize. Elena wearing a sundress I bought her for her birthday, both of them smiling in that intimate way that suggests they've been more than friends for a long time. I drive to the address from the Facebook post, and when I knock on the door, Elena answers wearing one of Adrian's t-shirts over her pajama shorts, and the look on her face tells me everything I need to know about how long this has been going on. "James, what are you doing here?" she asks. And she's not surprised to see me, she's annoyed, as if I'm interrupting something important, as if I'm the one who's out of line. "I came to see how Mrs. Blake is doing," I say, and Elena's face flushes red because we both know that Mrs. Blake recovered from her surgery 6 weeks ago, that she's been home and healthy for more than a month, and that Elena has been using her recovery as an excuse to avoid having an honest conversation about what's really happening between us. "She's fine, she's recovering well, but Adrian still needs support, and I've been helping him adjust to having her back home," Elena says, and even as she's saying it, I can see Adrian in the background, making coffee in the kitchen of their apartment, comfortable and domestic in a way that makes it clear this isn't a temporary arrangement. "Elena, just tell me the truth," I say, and I'm surprised by how calm I sound, how reasonable when everything inside me feels like it's breaking apart. "Are you and Adrian together? Are you in love with him? Did you choose him over me?" She looks at me for a long moment, and I can see her calculating, trying to decide how much truth she can afford to tell me, and finally she says, "I never meant for this to happen, James. But Adrian and I have history, and when his mother got sick, I realized how much he needed me, how much I needed him, and I couldn't ignore those feelings anymore." Adrian appears behind her, and he's bigger than I am, more physically imposing, and he puts his arm around Elena's shoulders with the kind of possessive confidence that makes it clear he's won, that he's taken something that belonged to me and he's proud of it. "Look, man, she made her choice," he says, and his voice is casual, dismissive, as if my 3-year relationship with Elena was just a minor inconvenience that got in the way of their destiny. "How long has this been going on?" I ask, and I'm looking at Elena when I ask it because I need to hear it from her. I need to understand how much of our relationship was a lie, how long she's been planning to leave me for him. "It's not like that, James. It's not about timing or planning. It's about love, and I love Adrian in a way that I never loved you," she says. And the words hit me like a physical blow, because she's not just ending our relationship, she's erasing it, making it clear that everything I thought we had was one-sided, that I was the only one who was actually invested in our future together. What about our wedding? What about the 3 years we spent together? What about the life we were building? I ask. And I can hear how desperate I sound, how pathetic, but I need to understand how she can just throw away everything we had. "You're too emotionally unavailable, James, too focused on your career, too practical, and Adrian understands pain in a way that you never could," she says. And I realize that she's been preparing this speech, that she's been building a case against me in her mind to justify what she's done, to make herself feel better about choosing Adrian over me. I leave their apartment, and I drive home to the space that Elena and I shared for 2 years, and I look around at the furniture we picked out together, the photographs of us on vacation, the life we built that she's just abandoned for Adrian Blake and his manipulative mother who wasn't even as sick as Elena claimed. I realize that I've been living in a fantasy, believing that Elena loved me the way I loved her, thinking that we were building something permanent when she was just marking time until something better came along. The next few months pass in a blur of depression and professional decline, and I watch my architecture firm lose clients as word spreads that I'm unreliable, that I can't be trusted with important projects, that my personal life is too chaotic to inspire confidence. Elena starts spreading rumors that I was controlling, that I was emotionally abusive, that she left me because I was holding her back, and some of our mutual friends believe her version of events, choosing sides in a breakup that I never wanted to happen. I stop sleeping properly, stop eating regularly, stop taking care of myself in all the ways that successful people are supposed to maintain their lives, and I can feel myself becoming someone I don't recognize, someone weak and desperate and pathetic. My parents try to help, my friends try to intervene, but I can't seem to climb out of the hole that Elena's betrayal has dug under my life, and I realize that I've lost everything that mattered to Memi relationship, my reputation, my business, my sense of self-worth. 1 year after the wedding that never happened, I'm found dead in my apartment, and the official cause is suicide from depression and professional failure, though I know the real cause is that I gave Elena Martinez the power to destroy me, that I prioritized her happiness over my own well-being, that I chose to be her victim instead of choosing to protect myself. Elena attends my funeral with Adrian, and she tells everyone who will listen that if only I had been more emotionally available, if only I had been more supportive of her relationship with Adrian, if only I had understood that some things are more important than weddings and careers, maybe I would still be alive. I open my eyes and I'm in my apartment, but something is fundamentally different about everything around me. And it takes me a moment to realize that the calendar on my wall shows a date that's exactly 1 year before the wedding disaster. Back when I was 27 and successful and confident, back when I believed that Elena Martinez loved me the way I loved her, back when I thought that accommodating her needs and supporting her friendships would lead to a happy marriage and a stable life. The memories flood back all at once: the wedding that never happened, the months of lies and manipulation, the slow destruction of my business and reputation, the depression that consumed me until I couldn't see any way forward, the final desperate act that ended my life, and I realized that I've been given something impossible, something miraculous, something that I don't understand, but that I'm not going to waste. I'm 27 again, I'm successful again, I'm confident again, and this time I know exactly what Elena is going to do, exactly how she's going to destroy me, and I'm not going to let it happen. My phone is buzzing with notifications, and when I check it, I see 47 missed calls from Elena, all from last night, all with increasing urgency. And I remember now that this is when she started ramping up the drama about Adrian's mother, when she started testing my boundaries to see how much she could get away with. In my past life, I called her back immediately, worried about her stress levels, concerned about her emotional state, ready to do whatever it took to make her feel better. But this time I don't call her back. I don't even listen to her voicemails, because I know they're all manipulation, all attempts to make me feel guilty for not being available at her convenience. I look at myself in the mirror, and I see the man I was before Elena's betrayal destroyed me: fit, successful, confident, with clear skin and bright eyes, and the kind of posture that comes from knowing your worth. I remember how I felt after she left me, how I stopped taking care of myself, how I gained weight and lost muscle, and developed the kind of hollow, desperate look that comes from chronic depression, and I promise myself that I will never let another person have that kind of power over me again. My phone buzzes with a text from Elena. "James, I'm so stressed about the wedding planning, and Adrian's mother is feeling unwell, and I might need to check on her soon. Can you call me, please?" And I remember how in my past life, I would have dropped everything to call her back, to reassure her, to tell her that of course she should check on Mrs. Blake, that I would handle the wedding stress, that her emotional needs were more important than my own schedule. But this time, I don't respond. I don't even read the message twice, because I know it's the beginning of her campaign to make me an accessory to my own destruction. I spend the morning working on my architecture projects, focusing on the business that Elena's manipulation destroyed in my past life, and I realize how much clearer my thinking is when I'm not constantly worried about Elena's emotional state, when I'm not trying to solve problems that she's creating specifically to test my devotion. I remember how she used to call me during important meetings, how she would create crises during my deadlines, how she would make me choose between my professional responsibilities and her emotional needs, and I understand now that it was all designed to make me prove my love by sacrificing my success. At noon, Elena shows up at my apartment without calling first, and she looks surprised when I open the door, as if she expected me to be anxiously waiting for her arrival, as if she thought I would be desperate to see her after ignoring her calls and messages. "James, I was worried about you. You didn't call me back," she says, and I can see the calculation in her eyes, the way she's testing my reaction, trying to figure out why I'm not responding to her manipulation the way I did in my past life. "I was working," I say, and I don't apologize for not calling. I don't explain why I didn't respond to her texts. I don't make excuses or try to make her feel better about my unavailability, because I know now that every accommodation I make will be used against me later. Every boundary I compromise will become a permanent expectation. Adrian's mother is getting worse, and I think I might need to spend more time with her. And I know the wedding is coming up, but I hope you'll understand that some things are more important than parties, she says, and I can hear the way she's already framing our wedding as a party, already diminishing its importance, already setting up the narrative that will let her abandon me without feeling guilty about it. That's unfortunate about Mrs. Blake. I say, and I don't offer to help. I don't suggest that we visit her together. I don't ask what I can do to support Elena through this difficult time, because I know that Mrs. Blake isn't actually that sick, that Elena is exaggerating the situation to create drama, to test my boundaries, to see how much of my life I'm willing to sacrifice for her emotional affair with Adrian. Elena looks shocked by my response, and I can see her trying to figure out what's different about me, why I'm not playing my role in the script she's written for our relationship, why I'm not immediately offering to accommodate her needs at the expense of my own. James, I need you to understand how important this is to me. How much Mrs. Blake means to me, how much Adrian needs my support right now, she says, and I can hear the subtle threat in her voice, the implication that if I don't support her decision to prioritize Adrian over me, I'll be revealed as selfish, unsupportive, emotionally unavailable. I understand that it's important to you, I say, and I don't add that I'll support whatever decision she makes. I don't promise to accommodate her schedule. I don't offer to handle the wedding planning so she can focus on Adrian's family, because I know now that every offer of support will be taken as permission to treat me as less important than Adrian Blake. I thought you'd be more supportive, she says, and I can hear the disappointment in her voice, the frustration that I'm not responding to her manipulation the way she expected. And I realize that she's already planning to use my supposed lack of support as justification for choosing Adrian over me. I'm supportive of you making your own decisions and living with the consequences, I say, and I can see the way her face changes, the way she realizes that I'm not going to be her emotional crutch, that I'm not going to enable her betrayal by making it easy for her to abandon me. After she leaves, I sit in my apartment and think about how different this conversation was from the one we had in my past life, how much stronger I feel when I'm not constantly trying to make Elena happy at the expense of my own well-being, how much clearer my thinking is when I'm not accepting responsibility for problems that she's creating to manipulate me. I know that Elena is going to escalate her tactics, that she's going to create more drama, more crises, more opportunities for me to prove my love by sacrificing my dignity, but this time I'm going to choose my mental health over her drama, my future over her manipulation, my worth over her games. I spend the next morning reviewing my financial accounts, and I realize how much money I've been spending on Elena's lifestyle without even thinking about either car payments, her credit cards, her rent, her shopping habits, her expensive taste in restaurants and clothes and entertainment. And I understand now that she's been using my financial support as a safety net while she pursued her emotional affair with Adrian Blake. In my past life, I never questioned these expenses. I never thought about the power dynamic they created. I never realized that I was essentially paying Elena to have the freedom to betray me. I call my bank and remove Elena from all of my accounts. I cancel the credit cards I've been paying for her convenience. I stop the automatic transfers that have been covering her rent and car payments. And I do it all calmly, methodically, without anger or drama, because I know that emotional reactions will only give Elena ammunition to use against me later. When the customer service representative asks if I'm sure about these changes, I tell her that I'm absolutely certain, that these are permanent changes, that I will not be reversing them under any circumstances. Elena calls me that afternoon, and I can hear the panic in her voice, the realization that her financial safety net has been removed without warning, without discussion, without the kind of dramatic confrontation that would have allowed her to make me feel guilty about protecting my own resources. James, my credit card was declined at the pharmacy, and I was trying to buy medication for Mrs. Blake, and I don't understand what happened, she says, and I can hear how she's trying to frame this as a problem with my financial management, not as a consequence of her own choices. I removed you from my accounts, I say, and I don't explain why. I don't apologize for the inconvenience. I don't offer to cover this one emergency expense, because I know that every exception I make will become a permanent expectation. Every moment of weakness will be exploited until I'm back to funding her betrayal. You removed me from your accounts? James, we're getting married in 6 months, we're supposed to be building a life together, and you're cutting me off financially? She says, and I can hear the way she's trying to make this about our relationship, about trust and commitment, when it's really about the fact that she's been using my money to support her emotional affair with Adrian. Use your own money, Elena, or ask Adrian to help you, since you're spending so much time taking care of his family. I say, and I can hear the sharp intake of breath that tells me she wasn't expecting me to mention Adrian directly, that she thought I was still pretending not to notice her increasing involvement with him. This isn't about Adrian, this is about you not supporting me when I'm trying to help someone who's important to me, she says. But I can hear the defensiveness in her voice, the way she's already preparing to justify her relationship with Adrian as something noble, something selfless, something that makes her a better person than me. I'm not going to finance your emotional affair, I say, and the silence on the other end of the line tells me that she wasn't expecting me to be so direct, so clear about what I know is really happening, so unwilling to pretend that her relationship with Adrian is just friendship. After she hangs up, I call my business partner Marcus and tell him that Elena and I are having serious relationship problems, that she's been prioritizing another man's family over our relationship, and that I want to make sure our business is protected if the situation escalates. I'm sorry to hear that, James, but I appreciate you giving me a heads up, and I think we should have a conversation about securing our client relationships, he says, and I realize that by being proactive about protecting my professional reputation, I'm preventing Elena from using my business as a weapon against me. I spend the rest of the week reaching out to my key clients, not to gossip about my personal life, but to reassure them that my professional commitments are solid, that my personal situation won't affect my work quality, that they can count on me to deliver their projects on time and on budget. I position myself as the stable, reliable partner they've always known, and I make sure they hear my version of events before Elena has a chance to spread her narrative about my emotional unavailability. Elena realizes that she's losing control of the situation, and she escalates her tactics in exactly the way I remember from my past life. But this time, I'm prepared for her manipulation. I'm ready for her emotional blackmail. I'm not going to be drawn into the drama she's creating to justify her betrayal. She starts having panic attacks when I don't respond to her calls immediately. She starts claiming that the stress of the wedding planning is affecting her health. She starts suggesting that maybe we should postpone the wedding until she's in a better emotional state to handle the pressure. James, I can't breathe, I'm having chest pains, and I think it's because I'm so stressed about Mrs. Blake and the wedding and everything, and I need you to understand that I'm not doing well, she says when she calls me from Adrian's apartment. And I can hear the calculated breathlessness in her voice, the way she's performing distress to make me feel guilty for not accommodating her needs. You should see a doctor if you're having chest pains, I say, and I don't offer to drive her to the hospital. I don't ask what I can do to reduce her stress. I don't suggest that we cancel our plans so she can rest, because I know that every accommodation I make will be used as evidence that I accept responsibility for her emotional state. I can't believe you're being so cold, so unsupportive, when I'm clearly suffering, she says. And I can hear the way she's trying to make me feel guilty for not enabling her manipulation, for not playing my role in the script she's written, where I'm supposed to sacrifice my own well-being to manage her artificial crises. I'm not responsible for your emotional state, Elena, and I'm not going to pretend that your suffering is my fault, I say, and I can hear the sharp intake of breath that tells me she wasn't expecting me to be so direct about the boundaries I'm setting, so clear about what I will and won't accept responsibility for. She starts recruiting our mutual friends to pressure me, calling them to complain about my lack of support, my emotional unavailability, my failure to understand how difficult this situation is for her, and I realize that she's building a narrative that will justify her eventual betrayal by making me the villain in our relationship. Elena called me, and she's really struggling, and she says you're not being supportive about her friend's mother being sick. My friend Sarah tells me, and I can hear the way Elena has framed the situation to make me sound unreasonable, uncaring, selfish. Elena is having an emotional affair with Adrian Blake, and she's using his mother's illness as an excuse to spend more time with him. I say, and I can hear the shock in Sarah's voice, the realization that there's more to this story than Elena has been telling her, that maybe I'm not the villain in this situation after all. Are you sure about that, James? Elena seemed genuinely concerned about Mrs. Blake. Sarah says, but I can hear the doubt in her voice, the way she's starting to question Elena's version of events, the way the truth is beginning to compete with Elena's carefully constructed narrative. I'm absolutely sure, and I'm not going to be manipulated into supporting Elena's betrayal by pretending that it's about compassion or friendship, I say, and I can hear the way Sarah's breathing changes, the way she's beginning to understand that Elena has been lying to her, using her as a weapon in her campaign to make me feel guilty for protecting myself. 2 weeks before the wedding, Elena creates what she calls a medical emergency with Mrs. Blake, claiming that the doctors have said she might not make it through the night, that Adrian is falling apart, that she needs to be at the hospital immediately. In my past life, I would have offered to postpone the wedding, to cancel our plans, to accommodate this crisis in whatever way Elena needed. But this time I know that Mrs. Blake isn't actually dying, that Elena is creating drama to test my boundaries, to see how much of my life I'm willing to sacrifice for her emotional affair. James, I know the timing is terrible, but I have to be at the hospital tonight, and I might not be able to come home for a few days, and I need you to understand that this is about life and death, she says, and I can hear the way she's trying to make me choose between supporting her or being revealed as heartless, uncaring, selfish. I'm sorry to hear that Mrs. Blake is having difficulties, but our wedding is still scheduled for Saturday. I say, and I don't offer to help. I don't suggest that we postpone our plans. I don't ask what I can do to support her through this crisis, because I know that every accommodation I make will be used as permission to treat our relationship as less important than her relationship with Adrian. I can't believe you're thinking about a party when someone I love is dying, she says. And I can hear the way she's trying to make me feel guilty for prioritizing our wedding over her manufactured crisis, for not accepting that Adrian's family should be more important to me than my own future. It's not a party, Elena. It's our wedding. And if you're not going to be there, then you need to make that decision and live with the consequences. I say, and I can hear the way her breathing changes. The way she realizes that I'm not going to be manipulated into canceling our wedding, that I'm not going to accept responsibility for her choice to prioritize Adrian over me. The wedding rehearsal happens exactly as I remember it from my past life, but this time I'm prepared for Elena's behavior. I'm ready for her increasing agitation. I'm not going to be surprised by her final betrayal because I know exactly what she's going to do and exactly how I'm going to respond. Elena becomes increasingly agitated as the ceremony approaches, and she keeps bringing up Mrs. Blake's condition, Adrian's emotional state, the importance of being there for people who need you, and I can see the way she's building up to her final act of manipulation. At the rehearsal dinner, Elena makes a speech about sacrifice and being there for people who need you, and I can see the way she's setting up the narrative that will justify her abandonment of our wedding, the way she's positioning herself as the selfless caregiver who's willing to sacrifice her own happiness for the greater good. Sometimes love means making difficult choices. Sometimes it means putting other people's needs before your own. And I hope everyone here understands that real love isn't about parties and celebrations. It's about being there when people need you most, she says, and I can see the way some of our guests are nodding along, accepting her narrative without understanding that she's talking about abandoning me for Adrian. I stand up and give my own speech, and I talk about commitment and priorities and the importance of keeping promises, and I can see the way Elena's face changes as she realizes that I'm not going to accept her narrative, that I'm not going to pretend that abandoning our wedding is a noble sacrifice. Marriage is about choosing each other every day, even when other people need you, even when other options seem easier, even when following through on your commitments requires sacrifice. I say, and I can see the way Elena's breathing changes, the way she realizes that I know exactly what she's planning to do. After the dinner, I go home to my apartment and I prepare for Elena's final betrayal. But this time I'm not going to be caught off guard. I'm not going to be humiliated in front of 200 guests. I'm not going to let her destroy my reputation and my business by abandoning me at the altar. I've hired a private investigator to document Elena's relationship with Adrian. I've collected evidence of their affair. I've prepared for the moment when she tries to make me the villain in her story. The night before the wedding, Elena calls me from Adrian's apartment, and I can hear the way she's preparing to deliver her final betrayal, the way she's building up to the moment when she'll abandon me for him. James, I can't do this. I can't go through with the wedding, Mrs. Blake is dying, and Adrian needs me, and I have to be there for them, she says. And I can hear the way she's using the same script from my past life, the same manipulation, the same emotional blackmail. If you leave tomorrow, don't come back, I say, and I can hear the sharp intake of breath that tells me she wasn't expecting me to be so direct, so clear about the consequences of her choice, so unwilling to accept her betrayal as something I need to understand and forgive. You're being heartless, James. This is about life and death, and you're making it about your ego, she says. And I can hear the way she's trying to make me feel guilty for not enabling her betrayal, for not accepting that Adrian's family should be more important to me than our relationship. No, Elena, this is about you choosing Adrian over me, and I'm choosing my self-respect over your drama. I say, and I can hear the way her breathing changes, the way she realizes that I'm not going to be manipulated into accepting her betrayal, that I'm not going to pretend that her emotional affair is about compassion or friendship. I can't believe you're doing this to me, she says, and I can hear the way she's trying to make herself the victim in this situation, the way she's trying to make me responsible for the consequences of her own choices. I'm not doing anything to you, Elena. I'm protecting myself from what you're doing to me, I say, and then I hang up the phone. And I prepare for the final confrontation that will end our relationship on my terms, not hers. The morning of the wedding, I wake up calm and prepared, and I know exactly what Elena is going to do and exactly how I'm going to respond. And for the first time in months, I feel like I'm in control of my own life, like I'm making choices based on my own well-being, instead of trying to manage Elena's emotions and accommodate her betrayal. I dress carefully in my custom tuxedo, I eat a proper breakfast, I review the evidence I've collected of Elena's affair, and I prepare to address my wedding guests with dignity and truth instead of humiliation and lies. At 10 o'clock, Elena calls to tell me that she's not coming to the wedding, that Mrs. Blake has taken a turn for the worse, that Adrian needs her more than I do, and that she hopes I'll understand that some things are more important than weddings. But this time, instead of being caught off guard, instead of being humiliated in front of 200 guests, I'm prepared for her betrayal. I'm ready to turn her abandonment into my liberation. I understand perfectly, Elena, and I hope you understand that this is the end of our relationship. I say, and I can hear the way she's trying to respond, trying to keep the door open for reconciliation, trying to maintain her safety net while she pursues her affair with Adrian. James, please, this is temporary. Once Mrs. Blake recovers, we can reschedule, we can work this out, she says, and I can hear the desperation in her voice, the realization that I'm not going to wait for her, that I'm not going to be her backup plan while she explores her options with Adrian. There's nothing to work out, Elena. You've made your choice, and I've made mine, I say, and then I hang up the phone. And I prepare to address my wedding guests with the truth about Elena's betrayal, with evidence of her affair, with the dignity that comes from choosing self-respect over manipulation. I arrive at the church at noon, and I can see the way my guests are waiting, wondering what's happening, concerned about the bride's absence, and I walk to the front of the church, and I address them directly, honestly, without shame or embarrassment. Thank you all for being here today, and I want you to know that Elena has chosen not to attend our wedding because she's decided to pursue a relationship with another man. I say, and I can see the way my guests react, the shock and sympathy and understanding that Elena has betrayed not just me but everyone who came here to celebrate our relationship. I show them the evidence of Elena's affair, the photographs and text messages and witness statements that prove she's been lying to everyone, not just me, and I can see the way their sympathy shifts from Elena to me, the way they understand that I'm not the villain in this story, that Elena has been manipulating everyone to cover up her betrayal. Instead of being humiliated by Elena's choice, I want to celebrate my freedom from her manipulation, and I want to thank all of you for being here to support me through this difficult time. I say, and I can see the way my guests rally around me, the way they understand that I'm choosing dignity over drama, self-respect over victimhood. We turn the wedding into a celebration of my liberation, and my guests stay to support me, to congratulate me on my strength, to express their admiration for the way I've handled Elena's betrayal with grace and dignity. My grandmother approaches me and she takes my hands in hers, and she tells me that she's proud of me for choosing self-respect over a woman who doesn't deserve my love. And I realize that by refusing to be Elena's victim, I've gained something more valuable than her affection. I've gained my own respect. Elena's reputation is destroyed in our social circle, and her manipulation tactics are exposed to everyone who matters, and she tries to claim that I'm controlling, that I'm emotionally abusive, that I'm making her the villain to protect my own ego. But people have seen the evidence, they've watched her behavior, they understand that she's been lying to everyone, not just me. Adrian, faced with public scrutiny and social consequences, starts distancing himself from Elena, and I realize that he was only interested in her as long as she was my fiancée, as long as stealing her from me was a victory, as long as he could have her without any real commitment or responsibility. 6 months after the wedding that became a celebration of my freedom, I'm sitting in my architecture office reviewing plans for a new project when I look up and really see Sophia Wang for the first time, not as my business partner and longtime friend, but as the woman who's been supporting me through Elena's manipulation without drama, without conditions, without asking for anything in return except the respect and friendship I've always freely given her. Sophia is 26 years old, brilliant, successful in her own right, and she's been my equal partner in the architecture firm for 3 years. But I was so focused on managing Elena's emotions and accommodating her needs that I never noticed how much easier, how much more natural, how much more supportive my relationship with Sophia has always been. James, you look like you've seen a ghost, Sophia says, and she's smiling at me with the kind of warmth and genuine affection that I realize I've been missing in my relationships. The kind of uncomplicated care that doesn't come with conditions or manipulation or demands for proof of devotion. I was just thinking about how much I appreciate working with you, how much I appreciate your support through everything that happened with Elena. I say, and I can see the way her face changes, the way she understands that I'm seeing her differently, that I'm beginning to recognize what's been right in front of me all along. You don't have to thank me for being your friend, James. That's what friends do. They support each other without keeping score, without creating drama, without making everything about themselves, she says. And I realize that she's describing the kind of relationship I thought I had with Elena, the kind of partnership I was trying to create with someone who was fundamentally incapable of genuine reciprocity. Sophia has never created a crisis to get my attention, never made me choose between her and my other responsibilities, never used guilt or manipulation to control my behavior, and I realized that what I thought was love with Elena was actually just the exhausting work of managing someone else's emotions while neglecting my own needs. With Sophia, I feel calm, supported, understood, and I don't have to prove my worth or sacrifice my well-being to earn her affection. Sophia, I know this might change things between us, but I'm beginning to realize that I have feelings for you that go beyond friendship. I say, and I can see the way she's carefully considering her response, the way she's thinking about the implications for our business partnership, for our friendship, for the life we've built together as colleagues and friends. I've had feelings for you for a long time, James, but I never said anything because you were with Elena, and I respected your relationship even when I could see that she wasn't treating you well, she says. And I realize that Sophia has been loving me quietly, patiently, without drama or demands, without creating crises to test my devotion or manipulating situations to get my attention. Why didn't you ever tell me how you felt? I ask, and I can see the way she's thinking about her answer, the way she's considering how much truth to share, how much of her experience to reveal. Because real love doesn't require you to abandon other people, James, and I would rather have you as a friend than not have you at all, she says. And I realize that this is what genuine love looks like: patient, supportive, willing to wait, willing to accept friendship if that's all that's available, willing to support my happiness even when it doesn't include her. Our relationship develops naturally over the following months, without drama or manipulation or artificial crises, and I realized that everything I thought was normal in my relationship with Elena was actually toxic, that healthy relationships don't require constant emotional labor, that love doesn't mean sacrificing your well-being to manage someone else's needs. Sophia and I work together as equals, we support each other's goals, we communicate directly about our needs and boundaries, and I never feel like I'm walking on eggshells or trying to solve problems that she's creating to test my devotion. I never realized how exhausting my relationship with Elena was until I experienced how easy it is to be with you. I tell Sophia one evening as we're working late on a project, and I can see the way she understands exactly what I mean. The way she's been watching me recover from Elena's manipulation. The way she's seen me become more confident, more relaxed, more myself. Elena needed you to be constantly proving your love because she didn't believe she deserved it, Sophia says. And I realize that she's been observing our relationship with the clarity that comes from not being emotionally invested in the outcome, the way she's understood things about Elena that I couldn't see from the inside. 8 months after Elena abandoned our wedding for Adrian Blake, I'm standing in a small chapel with Sophia Wang, and we're surrounded by the people who matter most to us: her families, our close friends, the clients who've become personal connections, the business partners who've watched our relationship develop from friendship to love. This wedding is everything my first wedding wasn't: genuine, intimate, focused on the commitment we're making to each other rather than the performance we're putting on for other people. Sophia is wearing a simple white dress that she chose herself, without consulting magazines or wedding planners or anyone else's opinions about what a bride should look like, and she's beautiful in the way that comes from being comfortable in her own skin, confident in her choices, genuine in her emotions. When I look at her, I don't see someone who's trying to become someone else, someone who's performing happiness for the benefit of others, someone who's using our relationship as a stepping stone to something better. I see someone who's chosen me as clearly as I've chosen her. James, I promise to support your dreams without sacrificing my own, to communicate directly about my needs without creating drama, to choose you every day without making you prove that you deserve to be chosen. Sophia says, and I realize that these are the vows I wished Elena had made, the promises I needed to hear, the commitment I was looking for in a partner. Sophia, I promise to respect your independence without taking it for granted, to appreciate your support without expecting you to manage my emotions, to love you without requiring you to sacrifice your well-being for my happiness. I say, and I can see the way she's smiling, the way she understands that we're creating something different from what I had with Elena, something healthier, something sustainable. After the ceremony, we have a small reception at a restaurant we both love, and I realize that this celebration is about us, about our relationship, about the life we're building together, not about impressing other people or creating the perfect photographs or performing happiness for social media. My grandmother, who flew in from Hong Kong again, tells me that she can see the difference in me, that I look peaceful in a way I never did with Elena, that she's proud of me for choosing someone who makes me better rather than someone who makes me work harder. Elena called me last week. Sophia tells me a month after our wedding, and I can see that she's carefully considering how much to share, how much of Elena's attempt to reconnect I need to know about. What did she say? I ask, and I'm genuinely curious rather than threatened, because I know that Sophia and I have something that Elena never offered me: honesty, stability, genuine partnership. She wanted to know if you were happy, and I told her that you were, and she said that she made a mistake, that she realized too late that you were the better choice. Sophia says, and I can see that she's watching my reaction, making sure that Elena's regret doesn't affect my confidence in our relationship. Elena doesn't understand what she lost because she never understood what she had. I say, and I realize that this is true, that Elena was never capable of appreciating the kind of love I offered her, that she needed drama and conflict and crisis to feel important, to feel needed, to feel loved. Adrian left her 6 months ago, and she's been struggling to find work, and she's living in a small apartment and working at a job that doesn't use her education. Sophia continues, and I can see that she's not sharing this information to make me feel sorry for Elena, but to help me understand that my choice to protect myself had consequences that extended beyond just our relationship. I'm sorry that she's struggling, but I'm not responsible for the consequences of her choices, I say. And I realize that this is the lesson I learned from my rebirth experience, that I can't control other people's decisions, but I can control my own responses, that I can choose my mental health over other people's drama, that I can choose my future over their manipulation. 3 months later, Sophia tells me that she's pregnant, and I realize that this is the life I was meant to have: stable, supportive, full of genuine love and shared goals and mutual respect. We're building something together that neither of us has to sacrifice our individual identity to maintain, something that makes us both better people without requiring us to prove our worth through constant emotional labor. I never thought I could be this happy. I tell Sophia as we're planning the nursery for our baby, and I can see the way she's smiling, the way she understands that my happiness isn't dependent on her managing my emotions or sacrificing her own needs, that it comes from the genuine partnership we've created together. You deserve to be happy, James, and you deserve to be with someone who makes happiness feel easy instead of something you have to work for, she says. And I realize that this is the most important lesson of my rebirth experience: that love should support you, not exhaust you, that the right person will choose you without making you prove that you deserve to be chosen, that protecting your mental health is not selfish but necessary. I think about Elena sometimes, about the woman who abandoned me at the altar for Adrian Blake, about the manipulation and drama and emotional chaos that defined our relationship, and I realized that her betrayal was actually a gift, that it freed me to find something better, something healthier, something that makes me grateful to be alive. I chose my mental health over her drama, my future over her manipulation, my happiness over her need for crisis, and in doing so, I discovered that the best revenge is not just living well, but living authentically, with someone who loves you for who you are rather than who they need you to be. Elena's choice to abandon our wedding led me to Sophia, led me to genuine love, led me to a life where I don't have to sacrifice my well-being to earn affection, where I don't have to prove my worth through constant accommodation, where I can be myself without fear of abandonment or manipulation. Sometimes, the best thing someone can do for you is to reveal who they really are, and Elena's betrayal revealed that she was never capable of the kind of love I deserved, that she was never going to choose me over her own need for drama and crisis and emotional chaos. I'm grateful for my rebirth experience, for the chance to see Elena's manipulation clearly, for the opportunity to choose differently, to protect myself, to prioritize my own mental health over her emotional affair. But most of all, I'm grateful for Sophia, for the love that doesn't require sacrifice, for the partnership that makes me better without making me smaller, for the life we're building together based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than manipulation and emotional labor. The baby is due in 6 months, and Sophia and I are planning our future together: the house we want to buy, the vacations we want to take, the business we want to expand, the family we want to create. This is what love looks like when it's healthy, when it's genuine, when it's based on choice rather than need, on respect rather than manipulation, on partnership rather than control. Elena taught me what I didn't want in a relationship, and Sophia is showing me what I do want, what I deserve, what real love actually feels like. After she chose his sick mother over our wedding, I chose my mental health over her drama, and it was the best decision I ever made.